Welcome into yet another episode of the Online Church Blueprint. I'm Andy, I'm one of your hosts, and I'll be joined by Mark Lutz in just a little bit for actually kind of a special and interesting treat. And you'll hear a little bit in the recording and in the actual episode, but we had some scheduling difficulties throughout this entire week, and schedules were changing, and life happened between the both of us, and kids and field trips and work and all the things. And so we're actually live on one of Mark's Twitch streams as we're recording, and it'll be the same quality video and audio, so don't worry about any of that. But we're actually in, he streams on Wednesdays and Friday mornings, usually for 3 or 4 hours. Sometimes he plays games, Destiny, things like that. Other times he's hanging out creating D&D characters, which is what he's actually doing right after we get done recording. But we actually are having a conversation about digital community inside of a digital community. And so it's this weird sort of inception meta thing happening. It's an incredibly awesome conversation. It actually goes in a couple of different ways that I wasn't actually thinking it was going to go. And it's going to inform a couple of future episodes if I'm being honest. And so you'll kind of get to hear some of the treats dropped in there, some of the little things that we get to talk about, including the pitfalls of digital communication, including the advantages of digital community over physical community, and how pastors can actually talk, and church leaders, I say pastors, but church leaders as well, can actually talk to a digital community while still being in the midst of a physical community. And so there are tips and tricks and kind of action steps and really the how-to on building your online church, whether that is the physical church moving into the online spaces, whether that's, a physical church that's just kind of exploring online, or whether that is a fully digital church that's trying to figure out how to get up and running, or even to increase engagement and really increase your community. As always, we are really brought to you by Ultra Live, and we talk about Ultra Live a little bit in the episode itself, but Ultra Live is one of those platforms that is constantly innovating and changing and doing awesome things. And right now you can get a 14-day free trial to really the best all-in-one engagement platform out there. It is a place for your live streams, for everything that you want to be doing in terms of live church or live services or live events or anything like that. It allows your users and it allows your members to turn on their cameras and sit in rows and engage with each other while the live stream is happening, so they can talk to each other as if they were in person. It allows you to create table spaces and lobbies and areas for people to gather and congregate before and after events. It also allows you to really open up meeting rooms, and this is one of the kind of key things that I want to talk about real briefly. Everyone that we talk to in really any church space usually has upwards of 2 and 3 and 5 different Zoom accounts. But with one Ultra Live subscription, you can host as many meetings and create as many rooms as you want. And you can get rid of all of those Zoom subscriptions with one Ultra Live subscription. So you can head over, like I said, for a 14-day free trial, head over to ultralive.com. The links are going to be in the doodly-doos if you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook or anywhere else that you're watching. If you're listening via Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Stitcher or any other place that you can find your podcast, all of that information is going to be in the show notes. And now, without further ado, our conversation today on digital community, digital communication, the pitfalls and the disadvantages of everything that we're doing. Cool. We're going to go in. Here, let me twist this guy. We're going to go in 3, 2. I did 3, 1. 3, 2. Well, welcome back to another rousing rendition of the Online Church Blueprint. Listen, sometimes in life, things happen. Sometimes you get recording schedules, and then, for example, you find out that you had a dog that is needing to go to the vet, and there's only one appointment slot left for the entire week, and you have a co-host like Mark Lutz who is gracious enough to say, okay, cool, let's switch around the recording time so that we can do this during my Friday morning live stream. So, everybody, welcome in Mark Lutz's entire Twitch stream. You can say hello to the many, many people that are there. And Mark, happy Friday morning, man. How's coffee time been so far?
Oh, it's very necessary right now, Andy. If I'm being perfectly honest with you, it's been one of those weeks where on Tuesday, this is a Friday morning. On Tuesday was one of those days where I rolled out of bed, I got up, did my routine, and usually, I work from like anywhere from 7 or 8 in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, sometimes 5:30. And then I usually take a break, eat dinner with the family, get a workout in. Sometimes, if I don't get a workout in, I'll do things like eat 3 or 4 cupcakes back to back.
It's like
to back.
a workout.
Yeah, it's a very different type of work. I don't like my body to know what's coming,
Right?
And I don't want it to know whether or not my heart's going to get healthier or less healthy.
Right.
And if I just keep it on its toes, constantly in a state of anxiety, then it will inevitably burn more calories.
Right. Ready for all circumstances.
Yeah.
Zombie apocalypse or resting on the couch.
Yeah, it's really sort of like a SEALs training for my heart. Is what it is. You don't want it ever to be predictable. Think on your toes. And so, but on Tuesday, it just like everything just rolled one thing into the next. And I think I was like, I remember my wife coming over and it was like 5:30, and I'm like, how is it 5:30? And then that just rolled into 11:30 at night. And so it feels like since that day I haven't caught my breath, and I've just been sort of like trying to figure out what day it is. And well, we've knocked a lot of stuff out this week, but my goodness, it was one of those weeks where it was just like, whoo. Yeah, it was a crazy week. But you know what? In ministry, you have those weeks. So if you're listening in and you're wondering, what is the average week of the online pastor look like? I've had so many pastors ask me that, like, what does your week actually look like? They can't figure out what I do. And it's like, I do all the same things you do, actually. I just do them from a computer instead. And so you have those weeks where your week gets hijacked and you roll meeting into meeting into meeting into meeting into meeting into project into project. And that's how it's been. So we didn't have time for everything this week. So we're doing the podcast on my live stream. We're going to create D&D characters on my live stream for our Dungeons and Dragons ministry here at the church. And we're just going to knock out a bunch of stuff.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, you will kind of see remnants of the stream just kind of built into some things. Mark is constantly going to be looking at chat. I'm actually watching chat right now. We may reference people in chat. The couple of cool things. First off, Mark, in the description below, people will be able to find you. But where are you live right now? Twitch.tv/
The Lift, THELIFT, and that is short for the 113 Lift, which is a reference to a mixtape that I made for my wife, who I was dating at the time. So it doesn't mean that I lift a lot of things. On the contrary, I do not like lifting things. But yes, the lift. I will lift your. Some people say I'll lift your spirits. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not.
I mean, you lift the cupcakes. So
yeah, I just sort of fell into the name, and I haven't gotten rid of it. And we've never done a rebrand because there's very little actual focus on my brand here at Lux.
Yeah, so it's mostly the Lux brand. One of the coolest things is that last night I got the chance to do a stream. We're going to talk about digital community and digital communication here in a second as kind of a follow up to our last episode. But I got to do a stream last night with St. Bear from the Lux community, and really, like, I feel like a million communities across the internet. And I was Sherpa-ing him through mechanical keyboards. He is interested in building mechanical keyboards. I have surrounded myself by like custom mechanical keyboards that I've built. And so I was able to kind of like walk him through the process, and we made purchasing decisions, and I got a sweet Discord message from him saying that he built everything. So we're going to be streaming that as well when we actually start to build the thing. Super, super excited that we're able to do these things kind of all over the place, and super excited we're able to bring parts of the community in. And our last episode, we actually really talked about building digital community. And one of the things that we kind of were harping on, particularly Mark, who's been building digital community way more than I think myself or any other physical church pastor who's kind of leaning into the digital side. One of the things that Mark was talking about was the fact of just being present with people. You know, being able to turn on cameras and do the things is great, but you need to just like be present with people. And that's what we're doing here on stream, and that's kind of what we did with St. Bear last night. But there are actually some drawbacks to some of the things that happen in digital community and digital communications. And I kind of wanted to walk through those today. And I kind of wanted to end our conversation by talking about the advantages and the positives. So Mark, I kind of want to throw you the very first question. What's one of the biggest hurdles that you as a communicator see when you're working with digital community and digital communications?
Well, before I answer that question, I want to read something from Czech. It's
Yeah.
the Queen of England. The Queen of England says, I had to return my mechanical keyboard because it kept waking up my newborn, which is so funny. It's so funny.
Well, hold on.
And I want your help because I've never actually made a mechanical keyboard myself. And I actually really want to make like a custom one for my den or my my study.
Well, let's do it. So this is my most recent one. I built this off of. And we don't have to do this. It's based off of a Tofu 65. And listen, you can just hear the nice like that space bar. Like listen how good that sounds. This is your ASMR moment here on the Online Church Blueprint. But so that's a nice.
It's a nice pop. It's
right.
A nice pop.
This is the board I use. I built this completely custom. I built this for when I record. And listen. I'm pressing a button.
Nothing.
Yeah. So when I'm recording, in a recording environment, I can type, I can do notes, and you can barely hear it over the noise floor. Yeah. So there you go, Queen of England.
Nice.
Maybe I can help you build one of those, Queen of England.
Yeah, one of those nice quiet ones. Also, Young Heather, 1985. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate you. Welcome into the community. Okay, so the question was, what are some of the disadvantages and obstacles to the digital community? And there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. So there's a lot of disadvantages to digital ministry in general. And people have come to me and been like, do you think this is the future? Do you think that what you're doing is going to replace the church? Yada yada yada. And more of that has been sort of like boomer pastors who are actually just mad at me.
You actually you get people asking if it's going to replace the church?
Yeah. Like, but like I said, it's usually sort of like it's an aggressive stance, right? It's usually an aggressive stance. Like, do you really think this is going to replace the church? It's not like, hey man, do you think this is going to replace church? It's,
right.
Do you really, and I've only had that a handful of times. And usually it's whenever I've said something that seems really extreme and then like a pastor who's older than me sort of like responds in kind with the same type. And they're usually a very similar personality type to me and everything. And so like, it's just, I get it. I understand. Right. But so some of the disadvantages of it, right, is the fact that people can disappear easier. So we have a guy who's been in our community twice now. He came out of a witchcraft background, came out of some really dark places, came back to Christ, disappeared from our community, just absolutely ghosted. And he's really good at it. Like, he's a freaking pro. Like, he knows all the places to go and delete everything so that I can't find him. And so he came back to our community, was really involved. And then one day I woke up in the morning, I looked at my phone. 3 hours before I woke up, he had left our server, disconnected from all of my group chats with him, changed his screen name, changed his profile picture, dropped me as a friend in like 2 games, changed games that he was playing, and was just gone. I mean, he could literally be listening right now. I would not know that, right? So I think that there is a disadvantage there where it is legitimately easier for people to disappear. Now, it is easy for people to disappear inside your physical church too, right? You're not immune to that in the physical church. There's lots of times that people just quit coming to church, and we honestly don't even realize it sometimes for 4 to 6 months. And then we're like, oh, hold up, where's John at? John hasn't been at church in a while. Yeah. Then we reach out, and John's super ticked that we haven't reached out to him because he was a valuable member of our church and hasn't been there for 6 months. In my situation, though, in your situation, most of the time you can get a hold of John, right? You have a phone number, an address, you can stop by his house. In my situation, if people do not want to be found, I literally cannot get to them, right? They can just ghost me and they'll be gone forever. I can't go knock on this guy's door. So I think there's a disadvantage there. I think one of the other disadvantages is that there's no accidental community that happens, right? You don't just throw open the doors and it's just like, oh yeah, it's just happening because people were in the same space and they both went to grab coffee from the same spout at the same time and it struck up a conversation and now they know someone else at church and they're sitting with them, right? Some of that stuff happens inside of a physical building, which just doesn't happen here, right? If people are going to engage in community in any capacity, it has to be intentional. They have to go about it intentionally. We have to intentionally open the doors for it to happen. I would say there are some times that sort of like the bump into one another happens in digital space, but it's a lot more, it's substantially more uncommon. And so if people don't take initiative and you don't take initiative to create the spaces and invite people into them, it's a little bit harder to see that digital community happen. I would also say that in terms of keeping leadership accountable, In communication in a digital church, it's a little bit more challenging. Right. I remember in my previous church, there was one of my youth leaders, and I would have never known this, right? But she was her boyfriend had begun spending the night at her house pretty much every single night. That was never something I would have been able to find out, with the exception that one of my other youth leaders was her next door neighbor, and so came and told me about it. We had to have that conversation, yada yada yada. In my case, right, unless someone confesses to me, a lot of times they can keep sections of their life very private. And obviously we know this is the case inside the church, right? We have people who get into churches' children's ministries and abuse children. We have people who, get in, they go through a divorce, we never even knew that it happened. We have people who come from all sorts of different backgrounds inside of our churches and go through things that we have no idea as pastors is actually going on. So that isn't uncommon. It's just more common for me. And so I think all of the things that are challenges with communication and community physically are exasperated digitally to a certain extent. It's like they're just turned up a few notches. And so your intentionality has to go up substantially. Your systems and processes need to go up substantially. And you have to be able to do that in a way that still feels relatively organic and natural. I had a really interesting conversation this week, Andy, that may not have to do with this, but it does have to do with how important it is that we as churches really understand this. Could I talk about that for just a moment? So I was sitting with my team around the table, my physical team around the table before church this week, and once a month we gather everybody, including families, in. And so one of our worship leaders, his wife was there with their 2 kids, and we were talking about a local mall that we had all kind of grown up in and is basically a ghost town, has mostly shut down. And she said something that was really interesting. We said, you should go back and get your doctorate and then write about this. She said, the kids today and coming up have no third spaces. Third spaces do not exist for them. There is no safe third space.
So home,
meaning
school, and like
home,
the mall?
school, and there's no mall, right? There's no safe space at the mall because, it used to be. And Sheebs is in the chat right now as our stream director, was like, yeah, I hung out at that mall every weekend. Like every weekend I was at that mall. And, I'm not saying that it's the case for every kid, but for many, many kids, like that central public hangout space that's safe, getting on your bikes and riding around town, doing X, Y, or Z. She said the internet is every kid's third space. Like that is their third space. And so if you're trying to understand digital space and how the next generation uses it, think about digital space in the same way that you might have thought about the mall growing up. That is just the place that they're going to hang out. And if you think about it as the mall, then you'll understand why relationships are happening in digital spaces, because it's the safest third space for kids. To give you an idea about why the next generation uses digital space and how that's impacting them.
So I almost kind of want to turn the episode into this, because I think the pitfall, it's easy to harp on the negative, but like when you're talking about creating a third space, so, and I love that analogy, and like that is absolutely true. I'm sitting here thinking, like, my kids, they go to school, obviously they go to church, that's, I guess that could be considered their third space, although that's, it's kind of associated with dad's work and yada, yada, yada. And then they're at home, and like for my youngest son, his third space is Fortnite or, Battlefront 2 or whatever he's playing at the time with his friends, or Roblox. It's usually Roblox. So I almost wonder, like, how then as adults, well, let me back up and ask the question then to follow that, is that, are we as adults in church ministry, let's say we're creating that quote unquote space for anywhere in the 35 to 55 range, do they still have a third space? Are they missing their third space? Like, is it home and work and then they're missing it? Like, what does that look like?
My real question is that how many people over 25 look for a third space?
Yeah, and that was kind of where I was going with that question.
Once you have kids, I think that your third space becomes the church or the bar, right? I think that the pub, and I'm not saying that, when I say there are no more third spaces, I don't mean that like there aren't some, right? Like, I think for some kids, it's the dance studio. For some kids, it's the football field. I think that for some children, there are third spaces, but for the most part, a lot of those third spaces that previously existed are diminishing, right? They're very quickly diminishing. And if you think about it in our culture, I heard Jate from Jate Live talk about this once. He said, is there any place that you can go in life right now, physically, where all that you go there for is to talk and connect with people? They don't exist anymore, for the most part. He said, the coffee shop, I would say the microbrewery scene, maybe. The microbrewery scene, it might be a place where you go to connect with people and have conversations with people. He said, but the metaverse specifically, virtual reality worlds and then the internet is one of the very few places now where you go just genuinely to connect with people. It's the only reason that you're there. You're just there to talk with people. And if you've never thrown on a headset and jumped in VR chat, then you don't know what that experience is like. And I'll tell you right now, that is why people are there, right? They're just there to connect with people and have conversations with people, which is a very interesting dynamic. And so, I don't want to derail the entire show because I know we're talking about other stuff, and maybe there's another episode in the future where we can have a deeper conversation about creating safe and secure third spaces for next generations. But I think that I just really think it helps. It helped me, but I think it will help anybody who grew up in a third space, right? The mall, the roller skating rink, the wherever. That's where you were every Friday night. That's where you went to hang out with your friends every weekend. And you realize that third space has become Call of Duty and their Xbox game group, right? That space has become Twitch and the streamer that they watch every Saturday morning. The space has become Discord and the place that they go every night when they get home from school and from practice and they jump on and game with their friends. The third spaces have moved into digital spots. And then you realize I went to those third spaces for community and connection. They're going to those third spaces for the exact same reasons, right? Everyone needs those spaces where they're connecting and communicating with their friends. And so I think that it just helps us wrap our minds, those of us who aren't digital natives, it helps us wrap our minds around why it is that this stuff is important and why it is that the next generations are able to build and establish relationships using digital tools and why they don't see those relationships as invalid or only online friendships.
I love that. I do want to have a full episode about that because I think there's some digging that I can do and that you can do. I do know that one of the things that is happening in a lot of physical churches right now is that particularly student pastors are coming to grips in the physical space, are coming to grips with the fact that their kids are, especially after COVID, way more decentralized than they were before. And they are way more culturally appropriated to things that are not even remotely church-oriented in terms of activities, be it gaming. But it's been a cultural trend for, probably 20 years or so where kids just don't have the time for a Wednesday night youth group because they have soccer practice and then they have band rehearsal, they've got dance, all these other things that are happening. And that's a parental issue, but that's also kind of a kid issue. Not, kids are going to do what kids are kind of given to do. So I almost think like there would be an interesting episode, like how can we create, yes, a safe digital space, the third space, but also like how can we make that space portable, and how can we make it safe enough to operate at other areas. But these are notes for myself. I'll probably end up cutting that part out of the podcast, my little note. Okay, so let's drop back into the kind of the pitfalls of communication and community then. One of the things that you are extremely adept at is sitting in front of a camera and talking. Extremely. How do you feel? Do you feel puffed up about that?
Yeah, I mean, I really only come on this show because of how much you build me up, Andy. So that's why.
Flattery. That's the way to people's hearts. No, you are extremely adept at looking at a camera and talking to the person behind that camera, talking to the one person back there. I think that's a thing that a lot of pastors have a tough time doing is looking at a camera and understanding there's probably only one, maybe two other people on the other side of that lens, not talking to what they perceive as an entire huge group of people. Because they see it, oh my gosh, we had 500 people on stream. They think, well, there's 500 people watching me at the same time. I got to talk to all of them. But there's a personal connection that happens with a lens right there where it's just me and you, or it's just me and, your family on the couch or whatever. How do you go about parsing that, and what are some of the things that you try to avoid in over time as you've gotten your reps? Like there's those pitfalls there. What are the things that you're trying to jump over as you're talking and communicating?
You mean like specifically like how am I keeping people, and how am I like in my communication helping that stay personal and intentional?
Yeah.
Especially are we speaking especially when preaching? Are we talking streaming? Are we
I think one and the same, honestly. I kind of think when you're preaching to a stream, but you're also preaching to a church. When you're on stream, obviously you're talking to a person. So we could let's start with preaching, and then let's kind of go to general communication overall.
Yeah, I think most pastors have some level of experience with preaching to a camera because of COVID.
Yeah,
and they were like, they know that they're preaching to 200 or 300 people, or however many, 25,000 people, depending on your church, right? But they don't. Right. They also feel like there's no energy in the room. It seems empty. I don't really understand. Like I can't get, there's a lot of emotional feedback that comes from preaching in person. And you don't get that in a live stream situation. Even if you can see the chat. Right. I know that there's energy happening in our space whenever I know, like I'm looking at the camera and below my sight, I can't actually read the chat, but I can see it flickering.
Yeah.
Right. I know that it's moving. Then I know there's energy. Now, sometimes that's good stuff. I'm getting amens. People are interacting, and that's a good thing. Sometimes people are talking about like what's like the most hilarious Pokemon that could be placed on like their Pokemon head that could be placed on my head while I'm preaching,
yeah,
right?
Totally.
Has nothing to do with the content of what I'm talking about. Like I literally absolutely nothing. And so, but either way, like there's some like energy and some feedback coming through. I think a lot of it is like, I know the people that I preach the same way at Lux that I preached before, right? I'm preaching to a person almost every single time. Now I'm not calling out that person. I watched a guy online the other day who was just like airing out someone else's dirty laundry on stage live on the internet.
Jeez.
Like, that's a bad idea, man. Maybe you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
He was just ticked. He's a pastor and he was mad. And so I'm not airing out someone's dirty laundry, but very frequently there will be a couple of people that I have in mind throughout the course of my message that I know that this section of the message has the ability to touch their heart. And I think as pastors, what we end up doing is we try to hit the broad spectrum, and this is more about communication, and we think the broader we go, the more people we can hit, when you don't realize that the more narrow you go, the more people that you hit, almost always with your message. And so I really narrow it in and like, okay, this section is for this person, and I know it's for this person. Now I know it's going to hit more than this person because this isn't the only person going through this, right? This isn't the only person that's going to receive this, and the Holy Spirit is going to do something in other people's lives that maybe I didn't intend to happen through this particular passage or through this particular section of my message. But knowing who those people are is really helpful to me, right? Because I know their stories and I know that they're going to be touched or they're going to be challenged by this particular passage or by this particular section of my message. And so I am thinking about them while I'm writing. And I am thinking about, now, it can get bad. You can obsess over specific individuals, right? But I try not to do that, but I have people in mind while I'm writing, and I know their faces and I know their stories, right? And I think one of the things that is hard in the digital space with pastors who are preaching to a camera is that they feel like they're just preaching to a number. They don't realize they're preaching to people. And because they don't know the people that are inside that number and they're not connected with them, they feel like they're just disembodied things, right? They're just disembodied screen names or anonymous names that just they're not connected because they haven't said hello in the chat yet. They haven't said hello to your host. And then on top of that, a lot of times they don't have it. So I think honestly, one of the things that's helped so much is that first 15 minutes of service where my wife and I are oftentimes, or me and someone else are just sitting on the couch and talking to the chat because it pulls people out of that disembodied number. And now I see their screen name. And I know they're at church that week. And I have an idea about who's at church, just the same as a pastor who's standing at the front doors or standing at the front of the sanctuary sees people coming in and they know who's in church. Before they ever get up on the pulpit or get up on stage to preach, they know who's in the building. I have a good idea of who's in the building before we ever get started because we have so much interaction in our live stream where if we have 60 or 80 people, I can almost guarantee that 50 to 70 of them are probably saying hello in chat before we ever get to the sermon. And so I have a really good idea of who's actually here. And because I know out of those 50 to 70 people, I know 90% of their stories, then I know what they're going through already. The same as a physical church pastor would. And sometimes my message changes on the fly because this person is here and I know their story and I actually don't want them to receive this the wrong way. And so a portion of my message changes. And I think in the digital space, a lot of times physical pastors who are preaching to a camera, they just don't really take that stuff into account because they just see a disembodied number and they're not seeing the stories and the people that lie behind them. And I think it's really important that we see and understand the stories and the people that lie behind the numbers that we're seeing as a physical church pastor, especially when it comes to online space.
Yeah, that's good. One thing that I have had kind of a rough time with, especially coming out of the pandemic, is that physical pastors are really good at, or they're better at, if they're in a house and they go and welcome to everybody here and welcome to the online community. They're good at that, and then they stop talking to the camera whatsoever, or they'll reference it occasionally, and then they're gone, and the camera just becomes like one person. And the thing, it just becomes like another part of the scan that you're doing in the room that you automatically do as a public speaker.
Sure. Craig Goschel, deliver one line here, two lines there, one line here, one line here, one line here, two lines there. He just bings between cameras. Exactly. He's really good at it.
He's really good at it because he's
incredible.
Practiced at it. But like, how many other preachers are good at doing that? Not many.
Most of them don't even know where the camera is in the room.
Yeah, or the lights are in their eyes and you see them squinting and it's like, oh, come on, man, we're out of this. And you're treating your online community at that point. And again, this is more for the physical church that is leaning into digital. Your lead communicator or whoever is digitally communicating at the time is now treating the camera as if you, on the other side of that, are just having a window into what's going on in your stream or in your whatever's happening. And that lately, for me at least, that pulls me out immediately of everything that's happening because I don't want to have a window. Like I don't want to be like Oliver Twist putting my hand, my face up against the glass, going, "Can I have a little more, sir?" I don't want to do that. I want to be there. Like I want you as the communicator to talk to me. There's a reason I am on this stream because like I could go do something else. Like and I'm a pastor
very quickly.
Yeah, like all I got to do is click out of the stream, or I can do what the thing that is almost worse. I can lurk, keep that stream up, but be doing something else. So now I have no attention whatsoever, even on the thing, and it's almost like I'm just paying lip service, like, oh yeah, I did church. Meanwhile, it was just minimized, or it was it was in the corner somewhere, and I was off writing a paper or playing Marvel Snap, or doing something else.
Which to be perfectly honest with you, you can watch church actively for a really long time every single week and lurk the whole time.
Yep.
And then all you've done is watch. In that you've consumed church, but you haven't been challenged to step into any level of faithfulness. And we all know that that's not actual church, which is what most pastors. That's what most pastors like levy against digital church and digital expression is they think that's what it is.
Yep.
Well, maybe that's what they've created, but that's not what it is.
Yep, absolutely. The last little thing I wanted to bring up today was there was in one of our communities that we kind of frequent, there was some things being bandied about by somebody who I think was pretty ardently against digital community and digital communication. I'm trying to parse my words a little bit, but there was somebody essentially like coming into the community and just blowing up everybody's spot, thinking he was doing the Lord's work and he was on a crusade. And A, it wasn't taken as that. B, it was never presented in such a way that was actually compelling. And C, like I don't actually think some of the points this guy was making were actually true. Or were verifiable and were going to be held up as something that is going to be disadvantageous to digital communication. What are the advantages of what we do here? Like, what are the advantages of everything that's happening online? This gentleman was saying that you can't really form real relationships and all those things. All the same things we heard.
All the stuff. All the stuff.
So, like, what are the advantages to what we do? Not the drawbacks, but the advantages.
First off, I just want to point out the people that say that you can't form digital community and that church can't exist online. I'm perfectly willing to have legitimate conversations with if you will commit yourself to exegesis and not eisegesis. But I am yet to meet one individual in all of my time talking with pastors and leaders in this space that is willing to commit to not stepping into eisegesis in order to prove their point.
Do you want to elaborate the difference between exa and isa?
Yeah, so exegesis is wherever you do not read your own context into the script of Bible in order to draw out the conclusion that you want. Eisegesis is when you do that. You read your own context into it in order to get out what you want out of it. And so until people are willing to admit that the Bible has principles that we should apply to the internet, but the Bible itself does not speak about the internet or intentionally how we should use it, I just can't even have the conversation anymore, right? Like, I just can't deal with anybody pulling a passage from Hebrews on me anymore and saying, see, you're not gathering. And assuming that this guy who wrote the passage of Hebrews, who we literally don't even know who wrote the book Hebrews, is saying that about the internet, because they are not saying it about the internet, and that is not helpful to me. And so, but I am willing to have the conversation with people if you're committed to genuine exegesis and like actually looking at the biblical text in a way that's authentic. Until then, it just looks silly, quite frankly. It just looks silly. And so, some of the advantages, so we've talked about some of the disadvantages, the high level of intentionality you need, the ease in which people can disconnect from your community and disappear, all of the other stuff that comes with the internet in terms of like trolling and people being fake and people creating fake identities and all of that sort of stuff is all very real, very honest, negative elements of digital community. Some of the positives are that we can connect with anybody anywhere in the world at any time. We can go cross-culture. We have a truly multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multicultural church, and that doesn't just include, well, we got one person from, we got people of 3 different skin colors in our church, and we should all celebrate that, because I think that multicultural ministry has devolved into how many different skin colors are in your church. I'm not at all, we do have multiple skin colors in our church. I'm not concerned about that. I love the fact that when it comes to multicultural, we have someone from the culture of Tampa. We have someone from the culture of Toronto. We have somebody from the culture of Guam. We have somebody from the culture of Pittsburgh. We have somebody from the culture of rural Missouri. And I love that and you don't even recognize the fact that there are localized cultures until you gather people from a wide arrangement of localized cultures and see that they think differently, act differently, and understand things differently than you. So that has been really cool for us. I think one of the other distinct advantages is that we are 24/7, and so that people can get a hold of us at any time. We're not locking our front doors throughout the week and letting you in on Sunday morning for an hour. And so I think that the 24-hour nature of the church and the 24-hour nature of digital space means that people do genuinely engage throughout the week in the scriptures and in prayer and in community, and it's natural for them to do so. They just think that that's expected, right? That I'm here throughout the week, instead of it just being once a week I show up for church. Now, we still have that struggle sometimes because people live in multiple digital communities. Sometimes Lux isn't one of those, even though they're in our server and even though they come to church on a weekly basis. I think some of the other advantages of digital space is, honestly, it's like the time stuff, right? It is a lot easier for people to commit to coming to a small group when, instead of getting dressed, getting the kids packed up, finding a babysitter, having someone put them down, they can get the kids down for bed and jump on for a small group at 8:30 in their pajamas for a small group. And you're not having to prepare homes or vet things like that. And it gives people a much easier time to just come and plug in and engage. And I think that is a really, that's a really big benefit, is like, right, it puts some of those cookies on the bottom shelf, right? Like, it sucks whenever the thing that restrains people from actually coming in and investing in a digital relationship, or in a relationship, or in a small group at your church, is the fact that they have kids and they can't afford childcare. That sucks. That sucks. And it's a very real obstacle for any church that has any young people in it. Yeah. And, I ran small groups for years, and there was a real obstacle to the, 50 families in our church that had kids to get involved in a small group. It was just hard because they had kids. And in our case, it's a lot easier to do that. And I think that has been a really powerful and helpful thing. I obviously think there's a lot of other benefits to digital space that allows you to do things that you just can't. Ease of access for communication. Is communication harder? Yes. And in other aspects, is it easier? Absolutely. It's a lot easier to get a hold of people in my church, and a lot easier to stay connected with them because of the fact that we live on their phone. And I think that's a big benefit as well. So yeah, there's a lot of positives and negatives. The point is that it's not like that people who have something to say negative about the digital space and digital community usually have like the one humdinger, right? Well, you can't do this. And it's like, okay, you're right. We can't do that as well. We can't do it. We can't do it as well. It is a little bit harder for us to do that thing that you're talking about. However, like, can we take an honest assessment and say, we can't do this as well, but here's 5 things that you can't do as well that we can do better.
Yep.
And it's a trade-off, right? It's not a, this is stupid and you shouldn't do it because you can't do this thing. It's like, no, we can do it. We can't do it as well as you. It's not as easy to do as you. But here's another handful of things that we can do way easier than you can. And these are also very beneficial for the church. And we don't ever weigh those things out very well in the conversation, right? It's just like, no, I'm used to this and I like this thing and you can't do it as well, so we're not doing it. And I just think that's an unhelpful conversation.
Last question from me. You said cookies on the bottom shelf, and that got me thinking, what's S tier cookie for you?
Oh, you know what? Recently, it is Oreo, vanilla Oreo lemon thins.
Oh, dude.
Vanilla Oreo lemon thins, the lemon ones. Jeez, bro. Those things, I could just pound them. Now, I love a good hot chocolate chip cookie just like anybody else. Top tier cookie. My mom makes these candy cane cookies that aren't mint. They're kind of an almondy cookie around Christmas time. Freaking dope. But the day-to-day right now, it is the vanilla Oreo lemon thins.
Esther in the chat says that's a lot of adjectives for a cookie. Yeah, that is a whole lot of adjectives for a cookie. Also, you put lemon in there, and you had me at vanilla Oreo. That was good, but lemon.
Oh, dude, you have no idea. It's subtle. It's subtle. It's very good.
Fruit.
Go buy yourself a pack of they're thins, the real crispy ones, like a thin, crispy one. Vanilla Oreo lemon thins. You won't regret it. You'll eat the whole box.
Fruit. No, dude, fruit. I want to throw all fruit. I want to burn all fruit trees forever because fruit is the worst.
Wow. You don't like fruit?
No, dude. We
just
never
in
talked
general.
about this? No, yeah.
Like
fruit.
you don't like apples?
I don't like any fruit ever.
I
eat a banana about once or twice a week because of health. Because I mean,
as a man who runs so often, I would think that the second healthiest food group you would enjoy.
Vegetables. I have never met a vegetable I have turned away ever. Like I'll eat any vegetable under the sun. Raw.
Vegetables are the top healthiest in the food group. The one below that is fruits.
No, dude, fruit has so much sugar.
Fruits and vegetables.
But like fruit
That's what they say.
So much sugar, and it's less like whatever about the sugar. Like
what are you, vegetables and milk? Is that your top two?
No.
Is that your top two?
No.
A mouthful of asparagus and slug back some chocolate milk?
No, it's just like I'll do the asparagus and then a steak next to it. Like it's meat. Or legumes.
Oh my gosh. Escher in chat just said, my wife and I have been making ice cream out of cottage cheese and frozen fruit.
I'm going to go throw up.
No.
Yeah, I'm going to go throw up. Cottage cheese looks just gross.
No!